Hello out there, and today we're going to be taking a look at a knife from 511 Tactical, and this is called the Inceptor Curia, and I've got a little bit of an introduction before I get to the knife, so hopefully you'll bear with me, guys. But you might be looking at this right now and thinking that this is the first 511 knife I've ever had on the channel, and if you are thinking that, you're probably right. I think it is. And there's a reason why now is the time that I'm checking this knife out, and it is because of you guys. Because about a month ago, I posted a video about knives in the sub $30 price point, talking about how that price point for major manufacturers at least is really starting to go away. You know, the Kershaws, the CRKTs of the world, even their import stuff is starting to be priced out of that $30 range, seeing it at like $40, even $50 for some of the stuff that they're doing. And a knife like this recent Kershaw Epistle, which we will talk about a little bit more, is the exception, coming in at sub $30 rather than the rule. And so I made a video about that, just not really lamenting, but just, you know, commenting on the state of the market. And so many of you had great feedback about that. So many of you in the comments gave me suggestions about what brands to try out or what models I needed to see and what stuff was keeping that sub $30 budget price point alive. And so I really appreciated that. And more importantly, I listened, you know, and I decided now would be a good time to start a new kind of series, a new playlist where I talk about the current new releases, you know, like not stuff that's been on the market for 3 or 4 years, but stuff that is like new and still coming out that is in that sub $30 price range. And what I'm going to be doing is reviewing these knives, and then at the end of each video, bringing them all out and ranking them. And so at the end of this video, I will bring out the Epistle again, because that technically is the first in the series, I guess, and I'll rank that versus this 511 Tactical knife. And I'll show you what knives are coming next in the series. And at the end of each of those videos, I'll do a ranking of all 3, and then all 4, and then all 5. And hopefully I'll get feedback from all of you about what the next knife should be and what I should pick up and what I need to check out. And we'll be able to explore new brands together, or brands that I haven't bought from in a while. And it should be a lot of fun. And you guys have driven the inception of this, and hopefully you continue to drive it. And this can be, you know, a good experience as we try to find the best bang for our buck at the sub $30 price point on the market today. All right, guys, so that's the idea here. Now that the rant is over, the ramble, we can get into this 511 knife. And let's just get started and talk about what makes this, in my opinion, a pretty darn good buy at $26, which is what I paid for this in store at a 511 store in Tampa. But if you find this one online, you'll probably see it for $24, $25 as well. That seems to be the price just about everywhere. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that price point for what you get. You're going to get budget materials, but overall, it seems to be a pretty well-built knife. So let's get into some of the size comparisons, and then we'll get deeper into some of the details. Starting with the most common sense kind of comparison for me is the Benchmade Mini Griptilian, because this one is just slightly larger overall than the 511 here. So if you're looking at the overall length, the 511 is right around like 2.6 inches of cutting edge. The Benchmade a little bit closer to the 3-inch cutting edge mark, but you can see just that overall length is going to put this, you know, 3-inch, sub 3-inch kind of knife a little bit larger than what we're looking at in the Inceptor Curia. So something on the smaller side here is the Kershaw Scallion. So the Scallion, you know, maybe a little bit too small for some people to consider a primary EDC. I'm sort of in that range too, where this and the Squid, I like the knives a lot, but they're not something that would be like my main go-to blade. And the 511 fits like the Goldilocks kind of fit, where it's smaller than the mini grip, sure, but it's larger than the knives that I consider too small to be my primary. So this sort of fits the bill in a number of ways. And when it comes to weight, it's also very agreeable because it comes in at around 2.8 ounces, 2.85, 2.84, and it's a stainless steel frame lock, so it isn't very heavy at all. So a good, well-built, functional little knife that isn't too heavy, isn't too large, should be agreeable for a number of people for a number of reasons. As we get further into the details here, we do have AUS 8 blade steel on the blade here, And I do very much like the design of the blade. I like the clip point with the swedge up here. We do have a very nice hollow grind and a little bit of belly. So this knife slices pretty darn well. I didn't use it on a lot of like thin stuff. I've used it mostly just on cardboard, and it's held up in the way that you'd expect any kind of like budget 8CR kind of steel to hold up. As far as being able to do anything controlled and compare it to this or that, I don't really do that with my knives for the most part. I just use them day in and day out, and this performs the way you'd expect a budget knife to perform. So no complaints there. You know what you're getting when you buy it, and this sort of lives up to that. As we move on back, you can see we have a glass-filled nylon handle scale. I really like the color of this. There are different options. I think there's black and there's also a red available, but this is like a gray kind of blue. Bringing back the mini grip real quick, you can see that mini grip is just a lot brighter. The Kershaw Leak that I have is a deeper blue. You don't see too much of this like blue-gray on knives, and yeah, I just sort of like it for the change of pace. I also really do like the feel of the scale. It's meant to sort of replicate G10. It doesn't do that so well. I've never been someone to say that it feels as good as G10 in most cases, because it doesn't. But it's a pretty darn good substitute. You know, it does give a little bit of traction. It feels better and looks better, I think, than some of the plastic scales that are out there that are like, you know, like this. Even though there might be a little bit better grip and traction on the scallion, I'd prefer something that has a little bit classier of a look, and the Inceptor Curia here definitely does have that. Now, on the other side, we have the stainless steel frame. What I like about that, and actually you're looking at it right here, is you can see just how that interface is engaged. That stainless steel right to the blade. I mean, it's not going anywhere. The lockup here is very good. And when I'm looking at a budget knife, you know, I have a number of prereqs, I call them, the things I'm looking at first before I'll really consider the rest of the merits of the knife. And if we get by, you know, with really good kind of lockup, then so many of the other kind of small details, the small things that might not be perfect, and there are some of them up here, which we'll get to in just a minute, you know, those things are a lot easier to overlook when they nail the major stuff. And the lockup is a big win for this knife. Yeah, we'll get back to this spot up here in just a minute, but let's talk about the clip and the rest of the construction. You can see it is open frame. My example here is centered fairly well. There's only one other big review of this knife that I've seen, and it talked about centering problems with this knife, you know, shortly after getting it, and I haven't seen anything like that. It's not perfectly centered, and the fit and finish isn't flawless, like I wouldn't expect it to be, but yeah, the centering hasn't been a problem. I haven't noticed any like deterioration in the performance of the knife since I got it, so no worries about any of that. Talking about the clip, we have a 2-position right side clip only. It comes tipped down, where it carries a little bit deeper just because of where those screw holes are mounted. On this side, we do have the pesky lanyard hole, which is getting in the way of a deeper carry. I thought that might be a problem. I flipped the clip myself and made it tip up, and you want to know what? Haven't had any problems. Hasn't really bothered me being a little bit more exposed, I guess, in terms of the real estate here. So not really a big deal. You might see it that way, but you know, you also might think the lanyard hole's great. So you know, everybody has their own preference, and at least you do have that deeper tip down if that matters all that much to you. I do like the clip overall though. You know, it does almost extend the entire length of the scale, which you know, isn't always the best, but it does make for a very secure kind of carry. So I do appreciate that. But now let's get into ergos, and let's talk about this area right here. It is weird with this tab, and we'll get back to that in just a second, but let's start with how this knife is in hand. For me, in hand, it's actually really good. It's comfortable. There are no hot spots, so nothing really to complain about there. The problem that I have is with the jimping and the lack of it right here, which is where I think it should be. And I really don't know what's going on with this. This doesn't really make much sense to me. it would make sense to me if that was a realistic place to actually like bear down and grip the knife. But I have smaller to medium hands, and if I were to try to cut with the knife like this, I'd lose a finger. Like, I wouldn't have all four of my fingers on the knife. So I'm not going to hold the knife that way. I'm going to hold the knife this way. And so this depression with the jimping here, it just doesn't seem to have a purpose. Now, if that's the intent and it's not supposed to have a purpose, then okay. It's just an oddity, I guess. But like, there's no situation where having this, at least that I've come across, really makes sense. With no type of cut that I would be doing, do I need this situation going on here? I prefer the jimping, if we're going to have it up here. As far as ergos go for me, though, like, even with this sort of weird thing here beneath my thumb, it doesn't bother me, and it hasn't been a problem at all. So the ergos are pretty solid overall. There's just this weird thing. And now there's another weird thing that the knife is closed. Because we have sort of a flipper tab. Is it really a flipper? I don't really know. I mean, this knife is manual opening with thumb studs, and it is on bronze washers. It flicks open very nicely. There's a good solid detent. So, I mean, this is a good knife, at least for a budget knife, a good knife to open and close. And I'm going to bring the epistle back out again in a bit, but if we're comparing these two knives, opening and closing, the 511 beats it by a long margin. I mean, like, not even close. This is a lot more fun to play with and open and close. And if you value that the way that I do, like, it's definitely a good thing here. Now, that said, thumb stud opening, but then what is this? Is this a flipper? Is it supposed to be there? Is it a design flaw? Is it intentional? I don't know. I have a lot of questions about it, because if it was meant to be a flipper, you would expect this flipper to be larger. You know, if you're just flipping, you can break the detent, but you can't open the knife. So, I don't know. Is it bothersome? No. Does it disturb the aesthetics of the lines of the knife? Sure, I guess. But what I did find is that if you really give it a lot of wrist, and I might not be able to do it on camera just because of the space that I have or don't have, but if you really give it a lot of wrist, like, you can, off camera, you know, I can flick this knife open with the flipper. I just got to give it like a lot of wrist as well. So there you go. You know, so the flipper, it does work, I guess, and it does have a functional capability. I prefer the thumb studs anyway, so there's that. Closing, you know, it's not going to drop shut, but there isn't a lot of friction or anything, so, I mean, it's certainly functional and focused on that more than anything. So overall, I'm pretty darn happy with the knife. You know, if this is going to be the beginning of, you know, a new series, when we're talking about, you know, knives under $30, and we have the 511 and then we have the Kershaw Epistle as our first two entries, I mean, it's a good start. It's a really good start. So, like I said in the ramble, comparing these two and saying which of the two below $30 I prefer, it's really tough. You know, the 511 is a knife that just shows that we're getting quality as good as the CRKTs and the Kershaws from a lot of other companies. And maybe you're not going to find consistency with all of their models. I don't know. I haven't tried all their models. Maybe you do have more consistency from the major manufacturers, but 511 can make a knife. You know, they can design a knife. They did a good job with this one. I am still going to say that I prefer the Epistle more. And the reason for that is just simply aesthetics and design and look. I mean, that's it. There's nothing about the execution of the 511 that is lacking compared to the Kershaw. If anything, I'd say the fit and finish in a lot of ways is slightly better. But it's just the design and the feel and the lightweight of the Epistle that, for me, puts it above the 511. But that's certainly a subjective thing. Now, what are the next two knives that I have in this series? Well, let's take a look at them. The first one is the Harns Knight. And this one I think was like 13 bucks. 8CR 14 MOV. I've had a Harns knife in the blind knife review. One of them was a Harns, so I've had one on the channel before. This one might have a very distinct similarity to a knife that some of you might recognize, and we will definitely talk about that when we review this one. And then the next one, whew, this is something else, guys. This is a Ganzo, the new Ganzo Firebird. This is the FH71 in D2 steel. Still testing this one and working on it, but this one is going to be part of the series as well. So we have a new release from Ganzo. We have something from Harns. We have a number of different companies and things that I'm looking at. So what I would really like from you guys is let me know, what are the knives that I need to check out for this? What are the things that that I'm missing? The brands that you buy from all the time that are, like maybe the honey badgers of this year that I'm just behind on. Let me know about that stuff, and we can work that into this playlist. And definitely check out the playlist down below. It's just going to be these two reviews, this and the epistle, but a lot more are coming, hopefully with your feedback and your suggestions. All right, guys. But anyway, any other questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know down below. Really appreciate it. I thank you for watching and all of your input. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.